Would you like to speak English like a native British person? A very powerful idea to help you in this week's podcast. Sounding like a native speaker is not about having a huge vocabulary of words. The latest research from Japan suggests it's much more about using simple British phrases that native speakers use all the time. In this podcast, I'll explain what I mean and give you plenty of examples. Forget complex vocabulary for now and learn some everyday British phrases that English speakers use and sound more fluent as a result. Got English exams coming up? This podcast is ideal for you. So this is some new research from Japan which shows it's the use of common everyday phrases, not complicated vocabulary, that enables you to sound fluent. This knowledge is well worth adding into your English learning method. So if you want to sound more British, more natural, this podcast is worth listening to. So let's do something important based on research today that's a bit more like a lesson. In just 13 minutes, I'll show you how to sound noticeably more British with a small amount of effort. Scientists at Waseda University in Japan published some thought-provoking research earlier this year, 2025. Thought-provoking means it makes you think. PhD student Kotaro Takizawa and research assistant Professor Shungo Suzuki studied what makes language learners sound fluent to native speakers, and they tested this with English. Takizawa and Suzuki discovered that formulaic expressions, that means common everyday phrases, make you sound significantly more fluent than using rare or complex vocabulary. Using simple common phrases beats using big fancy words if you want to sound fluent to a native listener. So formulaic expressions, that's Formulaic, it means expressions or phrases to a formula, ones you can learn, in other words. So there are lots of fixed phrases that native English speakers use all the time. We're not very inventive in some ways. Think of two people meeting. They'll probably say, "Hi, how's it going?" Or "How are you?" They don't ask, "How is your current state of existence progressing?" They're bigger and more impressive words, but it's just not what we say. The Japanese research showed that when we use these common chunks of language, we are perceived by the listener as considerably more fluent. Links to this research can be found in the transcript, and what the researchers found that people who make use of common phrases speak more quickly with fewer pauses, which also gives the impression of greater fluency. And listeners who are native speakers immediately recognize these common phrases. They're automatically understood and the listener feels more comfortable. It's as though your listener's unconscious brain is saying, "Oh yes, this guy knows what he's talking about. That's a phrase I'd use there." Or for a little bit of more difficult English, as the researchers put it, competent listeners are more likely to perceive the speaker's speech as fluent when it contains expected construction patterns. That means the same as I just said, just in more complicated language. Can you see how much less engaging it is when I say it in the complicated way? It's fine for written work, but not for spoken. We wouldn't speak like that. Anyway, this is brilliant news for you because as a language learner, you don't need to memorize the whole Oxford English Dictionary just to have a conversation. You don't have to learn thousands and thousands of words to communicate effectively. And there are so many everyday expressions that we say without thinking. They're automatic. Before we dive into some specific phrases and a bit more detail about that research, let me remind you about our subscription service. If you want more content like this to practice with, you want to speed up your English language learning, we have 8 extra episodes per month, 2 per week, and they're completely ad-free. It's a perfect way to immerse yourself in authentic British English and pick up more and more of these automatic phrases, these common expressions that make you sound fluent. Just go to adeptenglish.com to subscribe. You'll find all the details there. So very soon I'll give you some more examples of the sorts of phrases I mean, the ones that are worth learning. But first, let's talk about some of the highlights in that Japanese research at Waseda University. So in this study, the researchers were more concerned with what they call perceived fluency. How fluent the native speaker listening thought the English student was. So perceived fluency, how fluent someone seems, is down to the speed and the flow of words, good pronunciation, fewer pauses, and fewer corrections, as you might expect. If you speak slowly and you keep having to correct yourself and there are long pauses, you're going to sound less fluent, of course. That's obvious, and the researchers named that at the start of the study. But the main purpose of this study was to identify the part played by multi-word sequences, or MWSs they call them. That just means common phrases, words that occur together in English. Phrases like, how are you? How's it going? What are you up to? All very conversational. And the multi-word sequences that you might reply with, I'm good, thanks, or I'm great. It's going really well. Or if you're being honest, not so good at the moment. These are phrases that you'll hear anywhere in the UK and probably in other English-speaking parts of the world, actually. Very, very, very frequently used. In fact, earlier research done in the year 2000 showed that 20 to 50% of English conversation consists of these multi-word sequences. 20 to 50% of conversation. So well worth learning. And the research showed that native English listeners reacted much more quickly to multi-word sequences than they did to other phrases which meant the same but weren't familiar. There's an immediate understanding. Apparently that's Conklin and Schmidt, the researchers. If you're interested, the links are in the transcript. Other previous research, someone called Ray, identified that multi-word sequences are stored in people's brains as a whole. That's why the understanding is much quicker. Instead of reaching for a single word, your brain grabs 3, 4, or 5 words together. Much more efficient. Listeners immediately feel at home and confident with the speaker. A multi-word sequence we might use there, oh, he knows what he's talking about. Or she knows her stuff. These are common multi-word sequences. Those phrases just mean someone sounds competent. How did the researchers know which common phrases to look for? Well, they worked really hard, these researchers. Previous research had put together a whole list of common English phrases. They did this by looking at 79 million words spoken in a wide range of conversations on TV and radio over the past 25 years. That's in the United States. What dedication. My goodness, these researchers work hard, don't they? That's another multi-word phrase, my goodness. And to work hard. That's another MWS, a multi-word sequence too. Are you starting to see how common these are? Anyway, with that knowledge of common phrases, the Japanese researchers were able to demonstrate that perceived fluency, meaning how fluent a speaker sounds to their listener, perceived fluency was greater than actual fluency when common phrases were used in the right places. The researchers concluded, this research suggests that learners should shift their focus from advanced vocabulary to mastering everyday phrases that come naturally in conversations. They gave an example. You wouldn't say, I agree the idea. That sounds unnatural. Learners should use, I agree with the idea. And I would say, there are so many of these frequent, common multi-word sequences that the best way to learn them is through listening, through hearing them frequently. What Adept English helps you do, of course. Shall we hear some of these actual phrases that British people use all the time? All the time would be another one, of course. I'm going to group some very common English phrases together, depending on what circumstance, when you might say them. It's worth checking that you know the meaning of all of these. Learn to use them yourself and you'll sound remarkably more British. Here we go. The first lot. Managing interactions. You in conversation. You're asked a question. I don't know. Let me check. I'll get back to you. Or let me think about it. They're all things you hear all the time. You're on Zoom or a phone call. I can't hear you. Just a minute, I'll be right back. Or even, be right back, which can be shortened to BRB. That's what we say in a text message. The person's going offline for a minute. If you don't know whether the other person is understanding you, you might say, are you with me? Are you following? Do you get it? Do you get what I mean? And their response might be, I don't know, I don't understand, or simply understood. If you're giving an answer you're not sure of, as far as I know, as far as I can tell, or from your viewpoint, as far as I'm concerned. What about in work, our next group of phrases? Someone has an idea. That's a good idea. Let's do that. Or that's a bad idea. We're not going to do that. When are we doing it? Next quarter, next month, next year, or as soon as possible, sometimes shortened to ASAP. You want to ask a question. Sorry for bothering you, but can I ask? Something doesn't work. Never mind. Getting towards the end of a meeting. Is there anything else? And no, nothing else. That's it. Third group of phrases. Someone's giving a lift. What's your ETA? That means your estimated time of arrival. When are you going to get here, in other words? I'll pick you up at 7 o'clock. I'll pick you up outside the station. Or, I'm busy, I don't have time. I'm going to leave at, and you give a time. Where are you? I can't find you. Last group, saying goodbye. Hardly anyone in spoken English would say the word goodbye. This little selection of phrases is much more likely to be what you would hear. Take care. See you later. See you tomorrow. Or see you next week. Thanks for everything. Thanks for your help. See you soon. Drive carefully. Or bye for now. And that's shortened in a text message to B4N. In fact, that set me thinking. Learning all the phrases that are so common that we actually have abbreviations, shortened forms for them in our text messages, in our WhatsApp conversations. They would be worth learning. So 2 or 3 word phrases that are so common, we've got letters or codes for them. Maybe that will be an episode for our subscribers. So don't forget to subscribe to get those extra Adept English episodes if you haven't already. In the meantime, remember that Japanese research and listen to this podcast a number of times to grow your vocabulary of well-known phrases so that they come to mind quickly and fluently, especially if you've got English language exams coming up.